Most people who move to Salem, Oregon don't regret their move, but a lot of people do regret how they bought their home. And almost every regret I hear comes from the same handful of mistakes that people make and they don't even realize that they're doing it. Today I'm breaking down the biggest mistakes people make when relocating to Salem, Oregon and buying a home, especially if you're moving from out of state, so you can avoid surprises that cost money, time, and peace of mind. And one of these mistakes can quietly add hundreds of dollars a month to your payment without you even realizing it until it's too late. Buying a home in Salem, Oregon is vastly different than buying a home in a big, fast-paced city. Now, while Salem looks very simple on the surface, there are a ton of hyper-local details that only get known once you start living here. And I know this personally because my family and I relocated to Salem, and visiting on a weekend or just for a handful of days didn't really give you the full picture and doesn't compare to when actually living here. And this is the gap of knowledge where most relocation mistakes happen. So if you're watching this because you're planning a move, this video will save you from learning some of these mistakes the hard way. The first mistake people make is that thinking Salem, Oregon is just a mini Portland. Now I know a lot of people look at Salem and feel like, okay, it's a smaller town and I want a slower pace, but there's still some of these expectations that we have some similarities to Portland, and we really don't. Salem is a lot calmer, quieter, slower paced, and for a lot of people, that's exactly the fit that they're looking for. But if you're someone that's looking for that nightlife or the walkable density, thinking that that's still going to be here in Salem, well, that's when you're going to be severely disappointed and may have a lot of regrets. And if you've already made the move here, thinking that, that's a big mistake that you want to try to avoid. So if you are thinking about moving to Salem thinking that it's just a quieter version of Portland, that's where disappointment is absolutely going to creep in. Some buyers absolutely thrive here, but others realize maybe they just didn't want this slower pace after all. Mistake number 2 is something that I see often, and that is rain fatigue. And this is something that I was personally concerned about. The obvious is it rains here. It's the Pacific Northwest. We all know that. What isn't so obvious is, can you actually handle the rain that we have here? And it's not so much the amount of rain, it's really the duration of rain. And gray skies. We have months on end, basically from fall through winter and into early spring, where it just rains. And not that it rains every single day, but no sugarcoating, it rains a lot here. And it's this constant kind of drizzle. We call it Oregon rain. It's a lighter rain. And things are always damp and wet here. And all of this can really affect the way you use your home, your outdoor experience, and just your overall lifestyle. And a lot of people aren't necessarily prepared for this. So what I highly recommend is coming out here during fall and especially winter just to get a little bit of taste of it. And again, coming over here for a weekend isn't really going to give you a true understanding of what it's like to live here for months on end. But from my personal experience, I moved from a very sunny city in Los Angeles to the Pacific Northwest here in Salem. It took the first season to get adjusted. It was a lot at times, and I was warned by people that have currently lived here and that have lived here, and I just kind of brushed it off with some concern. But I really didn't realize how much it rained here. But now my family and I really enjoy all the seasons that we get here. We know it's what provides all the lush green nature and natural wildlife that we have around here. So I've come to appreciate it, but it is something that can be very underestimated, and you could have a lot of regrets if you're just not going to adjust right. Mistake number 3 is assuming that there's a lot of walkability in Salem. Now, while Salem is a smaller city or mid-sized city, depending on where you're moving from, there's really not a lot of walkable areas. I'll start off saying that the really only walkable area is the downtown area and the adjacent area, which would be Bush's Pasture Park, which is a neighborhood adjacent to the downtown area, beautiful craftsman homes, historical homes, that you can walk to downtown and enjoy all the entertainment, everything that downtown has to offer. But outside of that, your grocery stores, your errands, your coffee runs, some of your day-to-day errands and lifestyles, activities, you're going to be in your car. And that's just a fact here. I would love if it was more walkable, but it just isn't. Salem is actually spread out more than you would think. It takes only about maybe 30 minutes to get across the whole city, whether you're going north, south, or east, west, but you're still going to be in your car. The good news is there's not a whole lot of traffic here. There is some congestion during some rush hour times, but in general, traffic is fairly light here, and there's a lot of options to get around some of the bottlenecks in the area. But buyers thinking that they're going to move to Salem, Oregon and walk everywhere, the frustration is going to kick in, and it's going to kick in pretty fast. So if you are moving from somewhere that is more walkable, just know going into your move that that's not going to be the same experience that you have here in Salem. Mistake number 4 I see often with people thinking about buying in Salem is that assuming Salem is all the same. While Salem is a smaller city geographically, it is not the same, and there are vastly different neighborhoods and areas within the Salem region. And this could be a very costly mistake if you've already gone ahead and bought your home, only to realize that this was not the right neighborhood for you. It doesn't provide the right lifestyle, maybe it's not the right commute for you, and there could be other factors that just don't make it the right fit, because people assume that all of Salem is the same. North Salem has a very different feel than South Salem. West Salem, vastly different because you're crossing over the river and you feel a little bit more isolated. Then you have Central Salem, which is a little bit more in the heart of the city. So, and then within these areas, there are micro neighborhoods that feel different from each other. You can have a home that is 10 minutes from each other, yet they have a vastly different way of life, you would live a different lifestyle. When my family and I were choosing which neighborhood was going to be best for us, we were trying to figure out whether we wanted to be in hillside or a hilly neighborhood, or we wanted to be close to amenities, or a shorter drive to some of the big box shopping, or closer to some of the entertainment, or being further out in the outskirts, a little bit more peace and quiet. All of these play a factor. And so a lot of times, every time, that choosing the right neighborhood is going to be more important than actually choosing the right home. And later, I'm going to show you one mistake that quietly adds hundreds of dollars to your payment, even when you have two homes that are almost identical. Making a move is a big life event, especially if you're moving from out of the area or moving from out of state. I understand what you're going through because that's exactly what my family did, and that's why I do these videos. When I made the move, there wasn't a whole lot of information out there about Salem, Oregon and its lifestyle. And that's why I'm going to remind you, I'm Dave Fine with the Real Estate Dads at eXp Realty. I love helping people move to and relocate to Salem, Oregon. I've helped many clients do so. Through my own experience, I can help you as well. Hit me up at the contact information popping up right now or in the description below. If you want more videos, subscribe to the channel for more lifestyle information. Hit the like button to get this video out and comment below with any questions that you have as well. Mistake number 5 is underestimating commute patterns. Now this is going to be depending on your perspective. We moved from a very large city, so congestion, traffic doesn't really affect me or my mindset too much because I've been used to a lot worse. But if you're not used to that, you should be aware that Salem does have congestion and some traffic patterns. There are a few typical areas where this happens and a few reasons why this happens. I'm going to start off with one of the biggest controversial areas as far as traffic goes is West Salem. Now that's where we chose to live because we wanted to live it away from it all. But this area of Salem is separated off from the rest of Salem because you have to cross over the Willamette River, over the bridge, and sometimes that bridge can get backed up. Now, on non-traffic times, it takes less than 30 seconds to get across that bridge. But during the morning commute, during the rush hour of the late afternoon, early evening, that can get backed up. And it's not so much the bridge itself that's causing the problem. It's the roads that lead in and out of the bridge. When you get into West Salem, you enter off into Wallace Road or Edgewater, and they're smaller streets, and so traffic can get backed up from people going in and out of West Salem. And then it dumps you off into downtown, which can get a little bit more bottlenecked during those rush hour times as well. The other reason why we have traffic issues is because our streets here are just not wide. There are a couple lanes. There are a couple lanes each way, and so that creates a problem during these rush hour times when more people are taking their kids to school on their way to work, or if there's some sort of street closure or some sort of construction project. Those are the main reasons why traffic will back up here in Salem, Oregon. The streets that are more known for being notoriously backed up during these times would be Lancaster Road, Commercial Street, Liberty Street. Those are going north-south. And then for your east-west streets, it's a lot of the streets that are going to feed into the downtown area, like State Street or Trade Street or Marion Street and Center Street, because those streets also happen to feed right into the bridge that crosses into West Salem. So those are the streets that get most heavily congested during those morning and evening rush hours. But during the day, they're fairly open and easy to navigate. Also to note that if you're going to live in parts of South Salem or West Salem, you're going to be in some sort of hillside neighborhood, and that is naturally going to slow down your drive because it's hilly, there's lots of curves and twists, so that in general will slow down your commute, just understanding the pattern there too, living in a hillside neighborhood. And a lot of times where people go wrong when they look at a map, they don't necessarily know where the hillside neighborhoods are, or they see kind of how small or condensed the Salem looks like on a map. But the reality is, because it's so spread out and you need to be in your car, that some of these streets can get backed up. Mistake number 6 is something that actually my family and I made sure to avoid making, and that is not visiting Salem during all of its seasons. Now, I know that's kind of a pain if you're thinking about moving here. You're not going to come out here 4 times a year probably, but most people come out during spring and summer when Salem is absolutely gorgeous. It is beautifully lush and green. You've got spring flowers popping in the spring, green everywhere during the summer. It is great weather. Everyone's outdoors experiencing all the fun events that we have here in Salem, the outdoor adventures. But where people make the mistake is not coming here during the other seasons like fall and winter to get a better taste of what that is like. Neighborhoods feel different, and depending on where the neighborhood is located, that rainfall or the fog that sets in can really affect your lifestyle and just how you're living in that neighborhood. Also, traffic patterns get affected by the weather that we have here, and that also depends on the neighborhood that you choose as well. But the biggest mistake is really a mental thing, because when people come here during spring and summer, they just see how awesome it is here. And then they move here and get a taste of fall and winter, and they can fall into some sort of seasonal depression or some severe disappointment, not realizing how long those gray skies are actually around or how constant the rain can be during those fall and winter seasons. So that can become a real big regret. And so, yeah, when you come here visiting maybe for a weekend or even a week, if you're lucky here during fall and winter, you're not going to still really understand what it's like to go through months of that, but at least you'll have an understanding of what that feels like. You can see the same neighborhoods during the winter and fall that you did during either spring or summer, so you can see what they look like, how they feel, and how things change during those seasons. A street or a neighborhood can feel really peaceful in July, but have a very different feel in fall and winter. Mistake number 7 when moving to Salem, Oregon and buying a home can be costly, and that is skipping the specialized inspections. When you're buying a home, you're going to get your general home inspection that's going to cover the whole house and take a look at various areas of the home. However, you may need a specialized inspection, whether it's the foundation, the roof, especially if you're going to be in a hillside area, because when you're in hillside property, the foundation can be affected a lot more. And with the amount of rain that we get here and the gray skies and the cloud cover that we have here, moss tends to grow quite a bit on the roof. So those are 2 areas where if the general home inspection says, hey, you may want to take a deeper dive, then you definitely should take a deeper dive. Another specialized inspection you may want to have is for the HVAC and cooling system, because we use them both pretty heavily here for the warm days in the summer, and especially fall and winter. We're pumping up the heat to make sure we're cooling down or warming up the house during those times. And so again, if the general home inspector says, hey, this something looks a little off or not so right here, you may want to have someone come out and take a look specifically at that system, because that could be a costly system down the road if you're not going to get it double checked. Another area where you may want to have a specialist look into is the drainage, whether it's on the ground or the gutter system. You want to may have someone come in and look at both. Again, depending on what the general inspector says. If the inspector says, hey, everything's clear, everything looks good, then you're most likely okay. But if something seems off, or if you're doing your inspections during the rainy season and you're seeing pooling of water or settling of foundations, or the gutters are all backed up, then you may want to have someone come in and take a deeper look into that as well, because that too can be costly. Not so much the gutters, which can add up, but more so getting the water away from the house as much as possible so you don't have those foundation issues. And going along with moisture, because we have so much of it, you want to make sure that your house is free and clear of mold. Again, this can be detected during a general home inspection. If they see anything that looks or feels or smells like mold, you may want to have an expert come out and double check that so it doesn't get worse and cause a much larger problem down the road. While some of these may seem obvious, it's even so much more important in an area like the Pacific Northwest in Salem, Oregon, because the amount of rain that we have here and because how damp it stays during those winter and early spring months. And some people skip these specialized inspections to save time and money, but really the reality is it's much better spent there than a little bit later down the road when you realize that there's a lot more costs involved because you didn't do those inspections. Mistake number 8 can sneak up on you because a lot of people aren't aware, and that is ignoring future development. There's a lot of building going on here in Salem, Oregon. As more people are moving to the city is growing and expanding with residential projects and commercial projects. Now, a lot of them are pretty obvious. If you find a neighborhood that you really like in a house, you're driving around, you see the projects that have already started. But what you may not see is what's coming in the future, and that's where due diligence and some extra research comes in handy to see if there's going to be more being built in the neighborhood, because there's a lot of open land in some of the outer parts of Salem, and you're buying a home there, and then a year later some developer ends up buying that property and building, a couple hundred units there. Well, that can really affect your lifestyle, your property values, and just your overall peace of mind and quiet. If you are going through a neighborhood looking at homes, especially on a weekend, a lot of these projects aren't going on because they have the weekend off. So it feels a little bit quiet, and you may not think it's a big deal. But as we transition into the work week, that noise can be exponential. But as we transition into the work week, that sound can grow exponentially with all the bulldozing, jackhammering, and building. That could add a lot of noise pollution to the neighborhood, and it could go on for a year or two depending on how big the project is going. Another thing to be aware about is road expansions and zoning changes. Zoning changes is the big one. There's a lot of neighborhoods that were zoned for strictly residential, single family, and some of these areas have been rezoned for multifamily. So again, hundreds of units coming in, and these are large-scale projects that could affect the density of the neighborhood, adding a lot more congestion, a lot more cars and traffic to the neighborhood that was once quieter. So to be aware of these is very important. Now, nobody can predict the future, but we can certainly look at the city website and future plans to see what may be coming down the road in the next handful of years. This is something that I personally did because I bought in a neighborhood that was on the outskirts, and I was concerned that certain areas, certain land may be bought up by developers. And the good news is for me is that I actually found out where some of these projects were planned, and it just gave me the extra knowledge of whether or not this was still going to be the right neighborhood, knowing that there was going to be some future development, because what's quiet now may not be quiet in the near future. Mistake number 9. Now this one's a little bit tricky, and that is buying a house based on price alone. Now let's face it, we're all constrained by some sort of budget. We have a price range and we've got to stay with it. But the price of the house isn't everything. You also want to make sure of other factors along with the home price itself. You could have two homes in the same neighborhood that look and feel the same, and one is priced significantly lower, and that could be for good reason. You may think it's a good deal, but you have to look for things. That lower price home could have less sunlight, could have a steeper driveway, may have some more hidden maintenance that you're not aware about, or some drainage challenges that may be affecting the price too. A lower price home could be because it's being affected by a future development or project soon to be built. Even though they're in the same neighborhood, maybe on opposite sides of the neighborhood, but one's about to go through a big transformation with a big project that's being next to it. So there's a lot of factors. When you're looking at homes online and you're seeing prices, just know that that doesn't tell the full story. Really understanding the home itself, what you're comparing it to, and the neighborhoods play a huge factor in the overall final sales price of the home. There are a couple details that affect the home price. Again, if you're comparing two homes that basically have the same floor plan, but one has a lot of windows facing the south, letting a lot more sunlight in, while the other home is facing the opposite direction, that definitely affects the way a house feels and may affect how much money someone's willing to pay for that home. Another thing is when you're on hillside property, comparing a home that has more of a flat lot versus a hill that has more of a slope, even though they're the same size lot, same size home and everything, again, the way a property functions and feels can dramatically affect the price. So again, price isn't everything, and just making sure that you're aware of all these little details when you're buying a home. All right, we're now at the mistake that unfortunately has cost many home buyers hundreds of dollars on their payment per month because of this one detail that they didn't look into. And that is understanding the way property taxes work here in Salem, Oregon, and understanding the city boundaries. And this one catches people off guard all of the time. You can have two homes that are identical, similar price, in the same neighborhood, and yet have two very different tax bills. Property taxes here vary based on city limits, county pockets, school districts, and special taxing districts. I've seen buyers compare two homes and assume that the monthly payment would be similar, only to realize later that one costs hundreds more per month just because of the taxes. And most buyers don't discover this until they're under contract. That's why it's so important to look at total monthly costs and not just the price of the home. Unlike a lot of other states where taxes are based on the sales price, Oregon uses a two-value system. And to calculate your estimated property tax, you have to use the assessed value, not the market value or purchase price, and the real market value. That's what the county believes your home would sell for on the open market as of January 1st of that particular year. The good news is about the maximum assessed value is that it is capped and can only increase up to 3% annually. Another thing you should be aware about is that the city of Salem is made up of 2 counties. You have Marion County, which makes up the bulk of Salem, and that's going to be on the eastern portion of the Willamette River. And then you have Polk County, which is where all of West Salem falls under. And each of those counties have different tax rates. Also to note that some homes fall outside of the city limits, so they may not be affected by so much the added city property taxes, but are only affected by the county property taxes. So it really depends on where you are looking. And again, this goes back to having homes that are very similar in every way. They could only be about 10 minutes away from each other, and yet they could have very different property taxes. And again, because we're not based on the sales price, it's not an easy calculation where you get a percentage, multiply it by the sales price, and that's what your tax rate is. You need to look at each individual property before you make an offer to see what the current tax rate is, so you have a better understanding of what that property tax is going to be and what it could look like in the coming years. Now, there is another good news feature here, is that if you pay your property taxes in full, you do at one time you do get a 3% discount. Hopefully you're not too overwhelmed by hearing about all of these common mistakes that people make when relocating to Salem, Oregon. The good news is that these mistakes are all avoidable, and that's just doing your due diligence, your research, asking local questions, looking at neighborhoods, not just the house. When you visit Salem, be very intentional with the mindset that you're going to be moving here, living here, what your lifestyle is going to be like here. And if you are planning on moving here and buying a home, avoiding these mistakes will cost you a lot of time, a lot of headache, and of course, a lot of money. When I help my clients relocate to Salem, Oregon, I make it an absolute priority to make sure we avoid these mistakes so there's no big regrets once you settle in and start living your life here in Salem, Oregon. I do these videos to help you have more knowledge for an easier transition for your purchase and move here in Salem, Oregon. There wasn't a lot of this information when I made the move here. I am Dave Fine with the Real Estate Dads at eXp Realty. If you're thinking about making a move here and buying a home, hit me up at the contact information below or popping up or in the description below. I've helped many clients with this move. Hit the subscribe button to get more videos like this, learn about the lifestyle. The like button will help get this video out to more people like yourselves thinking about making the move. And of course, comment below with any questions that you want to ask me right here in the video.